Sasria. Staying with that big story, violence has gripped South Africa's main economic hubs for a fifth day after the jailing of former President Jacob Zuma. At least 30 people have been killed, with damage estimated at more than 2 billion rand so far. While stocks gained, the rand dropped for a second day. To help us assess the costs of the disruptions, we are joined by Business Unity South Africa's Cas Coovadia and investment specialist at General Capital, Adrian Saville. Gentlemen, so lovely to catch up with you. I wish it was under better circumstances, but nonetheless, Cas, just to begin with you, can I ask us to take a step back? I was asking myself this question, how we got here as a country, and I thought that it would be appropriate to start and get your sense of how we finally got to this tipping point.
Well, I guess the easy answer is that this was initially some form of reaction to the Constitutional Court decision on the former president and his arrest. There were threats before that certain elements in society, or certain elements that, in my view, have a clear agenda of creating instability in the country, will react in a violent way to the arrest of President Zuma. So I guess that's the initial spark. But I think that the people that you see walking into devastated properties and looting are not necessarily the people who are agitating or creating anarchy because of the president's arrest. I think that was a small group of people who started the anarchy, who started the destruction of property, and it's just broadened into, well, some people are arguing that people are hungry, so they're going to pick up food, but I don't think that's it either. It's now just pure thuggery and looting. And I think we've got to see it for that and respond to that accordingly.
Adrian, I mean, I recalled a conversation that you had with a former colleague of mine, around 2 years ago at CNBC Africa. You were talking about how the ingredients that predated the Arab Spring, being, you know, the inequality in the country, the high unemployment in the country, the poverty in the country, were similar ingredients as South Africa had at that time, and that eventually something would have to give. I remember that conversation, and I said to myself, I'm going to ask you, have we reached that tipping point then where something is giving? Because the economic backdrop that we've been living in this country for many, many years is not sustainable.
If you take the ingredients of the Arab Spring, or the markers of the Arab Spring, they were characterized by a society that was unemployed, highly unequal, and young. And by those three metrics, young, unemployed, and unequal, South Africa has been in far more stretched metrics. We have the highest Gini coefficient in the world, representing grossly skewed inequality. Our unemployment rate is 30% if you use the strict definition. Broader definitions take us into 40%. Youth unemployment sits above 60%, and the bulk of the population is younger than 25 years old. If you take an economy and then dose it with zero economic growth for the better part of a decade, and then in the circumstance of pandemic, are off the pace and behind the curve to get the economy and society back on its feet and remobilized, I think you have all of the makings of what we've seen materialize over the last few days. And I think it's fair to suggest that South Africa has been in this place for a long time. What we haven't seen is this very raw, angry, and distressing face of that social and economic crisis.
Because, I mean, my personal view, I got the sense yesterday in the president's speech in which he has said that, yes, the behavior that we have seen will not be accepted, and he's deployed a lot more force on the ground. But I got the sense that the president was disconnected from the economic reality of a lot of people on the ground. I mean, in the speech, he actually, Cas, went on to talk about the fact that the virus was spreading and that the actions had disturbed the rollout of the vaccine process. But for many people in South Africa, the virus of poverty and joblessness has been more lethal than that of COVID-19. What kind of intervention is needed at this stage, Cas, to finally turn things around for South Africa's economy, in your view?
Look, I mean, this has been a discussion that has been ongoing for a pretty long time. I think that we do need to, and we've been saying for quite some time, that there's absolutely no doubt, Adrian is absolutely correct, the ingredients that we have in our society. And for any serious business person to say that we have a situation in South Africa that is not unequal, and that society, and there are serious societal fissures in our country, that as business we can't say that. So we got to accept we're the most unequal society in the world. We have endemic unemployment. We have parts of the economy that need to be addressed that don't actually give entry to new entrants in a way that is competitively sound. And these are all things we need to address. But we also, on the other side, have a government that is not functioning, to be quite honest, a state that is extremely weak. And we have a fractured relationship between capital and labor. Now, these are all recipes for what Adrian described just now. And what we've been saying consistently is that we can't deal with these issues in mass meetings. We need to identify 15, 20, 30 people from the critical stakeholders in this country at a leadership level, and we need to sit down and thresh out what needs to be done to attract investment and put us onto an inclusive growth path. And in those discussions and in that process, we all going to have to make trade-offs and compromises. There's absolutely no two ways about it. Be it labor, be it business, be it government, we're going to have to make compromises. We can't move forward and still remain in our comfortable little boxes. That's impossible.
Yeah.
So that's got to be done. But that does not detract from having to deal with this current situation immediately.
Yes,
We can't continue to tolerate the breakdown in law and order, the destruction of property, as well as what's happening now. What's happening now is that this is becoming a racial issue, which we've got to speak out strongly against, because I think those who initially stoked this want to create a racial issue out of it. And we've got to speak out against that. We've got to urge our people to exercise restraint in these circumstances, although it's difficult. I mean, I don't know how I'd react if my family is threatened.
Yeah.
Who the hell am I to judge on how others would react? But we need to try, and government needs to take the lead here.
Okay, so I'm going to, unfortunately, Cas, my director's telling me I've got 2 minutes left. Government, can I say, just in my humble view, you've asked government to root out corruption. We have a former president who's presently in jail. You said let's fix troubled SOEs. We've had an SOE partner or equity partner that has been injected potentially for SAA. We said restore the power situation. Now we've had a threshold that's been increased for self-generation there, and also some movements that have happened there at the ports. Adrian, I just want to know what business also needs to do to come to this table to quickly address some of the economic ills that we have in South Africa now? As Cas did say, there's going to be compromises on most parts. What are the compromises that perhaps business also has to take to play its part in saving the day here? I mean, sometimes you hear things like the minimum wage perhaps being put on the table, and business reacting to say that this just has increased the cost of business too much and it's not sustainable. So what does business need to do to not only create jobs or help create jobs, but also help create quality jobs in which people can actually sustain their livelihoods?
There's no economy that has achieved inclusive social prosperity where you have a disconnect between critical organs. Cas has alluded to this. And amongst other things, you need viable institutions, functional institutions, and you need a close collaboration and coordinated engagement between the various sectors, labor, business, government. We are also a long, long way past the point of talking. We have to get and put our differences and disparities aside and get into the business of action. If you don't have a country, it doesn't matter how much you talk and point and blame, you will lose your company. And that tragedy, I think, is evidencing itself in these events, which are in many ways beyond description, surreal, and I'll use the word again, absolutely tragic. It is not one person's job or one part of society's job to fix it. It is our job to fix it.
Agreed. Gentlemen, we'll leave it there for now. Ongoing conversation, certainly, as we try to get to that point of fixing and the road to recovery. But thanks so much for your insights. Adrian Seville, the investment specialist at General Capital, and Cas Coovadia, CEO at Business Unity South Africa. And that's all we have got time for today. Thanks so much for watching. We'll do it again tomorrow. Goodbye.